the screen right away?
I would say yes.
Okay, let me get that going.
She's technically still on it.
Okay, Mark.
All right. Good evening. This is the Thursday, March 20th, 2025 meeting of the Capital Improvements Planning Committee. We are at the Public Safety Complex at 576 Pleasant Street in Paxton. We are also have a Zoom link, which is available with our posted meeting online. We are a committee of 7. 4 is a quorum. We have 5 physically present, 1 joining us on Zoom. That's 6. I declare we have a quorum and that we are open for business. So our meeting notice has been posted, and 2 principal points of activity this evening are our Capital Improvement Planning Committee report that we are required under our bylaws to prepare and to submit to the Select Board. It has been sorry for that interruption. The committee report has been submitted to everybody, and it's shown on the screen right now. There's some introductory information. But it really leads, which I think is important, and it's part of our committee report. I'm not going to read it to everybody, but essentially this states the fact that the CIPC committee is a matter of the Select Board back in 2013 under Mass General Law, creating the committee, and we have a bylaws which we follow, part of which is this committee report this evening. So the crux of the report are items 1 through 7. If you can scroll down a little bit, Heather, and you'll see item number, I think you will, item number 1. All of these are the result of us having met, voted on them, and now in less detail and text of those meetings and of the minutes. This is kind of an abridged version of what it is that we have voted on, and I want to make sure that, number 1, everybody agrees. I don't think we need, maybe so, but I don't think we need to vote on each one individually, but we certainly need to correct any of them that are incorrect, and at the end, we're hoping that we'll vote approval for the committee so it can be submitted to the Select Board. So the first item has to do with the Richards Memorial Library. They made a request of us based on a project that they had before them, having to do with HVAC controls that were rendered inefficient and ineffective as a result of some boiler work that they themselves, out of their trust funds, paid for. And they were simply asking the town to participate in a project cost of $17,500. They would look again to their library trust funds for $12,500, and were asking us for $5,000, which we recommended approval and recommended that it be used out of the capital depreciation fund. So I guess the question is that everybody's understanding?
Yes.
It is indeed. Okay. The next one was the fire EMS department. These are kind of the best kinds. It was a substantial presentation regarding the eventual acquisition and the cost of an ambulance to replace ambulance 2 to the tune of $450,000. And for those that have just fainted, if you'll allow us to continue the discussion, that happens to come out of ambulance receipt funds to the tune of approximately $79,000 per year for 7 years. It's a project that's going to need replacement. This is a very creative way of doing this. I dare say at no cost to the townspeople, because it's the ambulance receipts fund, which is a special revenue fund, so it's not in the budget, and it's not going to be a capital exclusion. Is that everyone's understanding of that as well?
Yes.
The third one, which might be a bit of a debate, but nevertheless, the Wachusett Regional School District superintendent, along with their buildings and grounds director, made a presentation, and there were some that were withdrawn. This one was a particular one that survived. That the request was for 2 boilers, of which they currently have 2 boilers, one of which is primary and the other serves as a backup, and they can alternate those particular roles. Then they just felt that it was risky going too much further with 2 boilers that are dated. And they made a request for 2. We basically offered to support 1. The $67,600 number was right from their proposal. And we voted that evening to support 1 and put forward it as it reads right now. What was left up in the air was how we were going to recommend funding it. And I think there was some consideration that this be taken out of capital depreciation fund, but I would remind you that that particular fund has $106,000 in it currently, and if we take this $67,006 out and the 5 that we just spoke about in item number 1, and $12,005, which we'll talk about in another item coming up, that would leave that fund with only $18,000, which I think is woefully, dangerously too low. So this funding source is for your consideration this evening and for our discussion, because we had not voted on it, so this, for the lack of a better word, has got my fingerprint on it at the moment. So with that, I'd open it up for questions and discussion.
I just have a comment, I guess, to add to the way this is written here. They originally came for 2, but we needed to understand that, I believe it was a year ago, 1 was completely rebuilt with new castings and the likes to allow it to continue. That's kind of how we got to the decision on 1. There was 1 that was, I guess, they're both of the same vintage, but 1 was totally refurbished or rebuilt, and the other one was in need of that, and they didn't think that was the best way moving forward, so we opted at that evening to discuss consideration of 1, and I think that's how we arrived at that.
True.
I agree.
And you raised an interesting point, Neil. All of the discussion background that goes into each of these can't possibly be in
The
a report. It would be
Okay.
prohibitive in terms of volume. So, David, did I interrupt?
No, I agree. I think it was for the boiler that hadn't been rebuilt to
Right.
replace it.
Right.
Okay.
So I guess in this particular case, we may want to take a vote on this one in terms of number 3, in terms of the selection of 1, the amount that I have, and the funding recommendation that we're making.
I'll make a motion.
Mark,
Yes,
before a motion, can I just bring up one point real quick?
yes, by all means.
So I know the recommendation is capital exclusion. I know, as I mentioned last week, my reservation about doing capital exclusion articles at this time is that it puts things and makes them competitive with the need for an operating override. I know the school came to us and they expressed their concern about the boiler situation. I know, Mark, to your point, we only have 106,000 in our capital exclusion fund. That being said, or capital depreciation fund rather, That being said, I think this is a very important project for them to be able to continue making sure that we have a heated building for the school. I can tell you from procuring boilers in the past few years, you know, when something does die, you may not have one available to actually replace it with, and it may cause a closure of the school if they can't do something. And I think this warrants using the very little we have of that 106,000 to support it to make sure that this gets funded. And that, at least that's my position.
Yep. Heather, can I respond to that? I think 90% of what you said was exact reasons why we put it forward. We agree. They do need it, and we would not want them to be without it. I just happen to fear that $18,000 of capital depreciation doesn't buy much these days, so I'd rather let the voters decide. Let them approve it. I think you'll find that they will, because this is an important project with all kinds of reasons to support it. So I'd rather us get behind it as well and let the voters have a say.
Just to follow up, just because we recommend at this point in this draft version, capital exclusion, that doesn't mean that's the way it's going to ultimately end up.
Nope.
Okay, so what's the process from tonight going forward to annual town meeting?
A little bit later on, we'll be talking about the fact that we're going to meet with the select board on Monday.
Yep.
And all of these will be discussed. I think the takeaway is a warrant article for a capital item cannot exist if it's not included in our report. But the funding is at the pure discretion of the select board.
Okay, so Heather, does that follow? I understand you have a recommendation, and then in this draft of the report, there is a recommendation, but that doesn't mean either one of them is the final recommendation, correct? Is that my understanding?
Correct.
Yeah, my only concern, Neil, is because the capital depreciation fund is something within the jurisdiction of the CIPC. I think it's easy to, you know, take a project that's funded a different way and have the select board, you know, make different recommendations or however. My concern is more so that if we don't identify something as a capital depreciation item, that there's not much else that can happen without CIPC recommending that. But that being said, to Mark's comment a few seconds ago, there was a joint meeting with Capital and the select board on Monday, so I can't see why, if discussions were had and there was a change of heart and the capital improvement committee that evening wanted to change and fund something from capital depreciation that they weren't recommending previously, I don't see why that couldn't happen.
Okay, thank you.
Heather, can I just make a friendly tweak to, I think, your comment? I thought you said that the capital depreciation fund is under the jurisdiction of the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. That's not true. That has to go to town vote. So whether this...
Yes, it has to go to town vote, but usually I think as I understand it, usually we wait for the recommendation from capital to spend from that fund. But I think either way, Mark, I think it's okay because again, there's a joint meeting scheduled for Monday. So if something, you know, if there's lots of discussion and there's a change for one reason or another, or strong opinions one way or the other, I think we still have time to make modifications, including to the report if need be, with people being present on Monday.
So in that regard, let's not take a vote. We'll take a vote on the committee report in its total.
All right,
Which includes this.
Just another question then. Is it possible that it could be funded as a capital exclusion if at the annual town meeting and then the ballot, it gets voted in, but if it gets denied at the ballot, that we then go back to the depreciation? In other words, can it be an either or it has to be one?
But if it goes back to capital depreciation, it still has to go to town.
Town meeting. Okay, thank you.
Yep. So number 4, police department.
Just a clarification. So capital depreciation fund, it's sitting at, what, 118,000 right now?
106.
106. Okay, so you deplete it by spending the money on this. What kind of risk position does it put us in if it's bled down to a smaller amount?
There's not much that you can purchase with $18,000. That would be the lowest I think it's ever been. We voted at special town meeting in November to put 69,000 into it because we were at 30-some odd thousand, and we felt that was dangerously low.
So an emergency.
So now we're
comes up.
taking it below that, which is, as a committee member, personally, I don't think is where we want to go.
But if an emergency came up and you needed that, it'd have to go in front of the town to be voted in anyways, right?
If an emergency came up, but the question is, what would we be able, what emergent requests would we be able to fund with only $18,000? It's probably something that we could fund at $85,000, or 40 or 50, but not 18.
So David, usually when we have emergencies, we look to use our operating stabilization fund, right? Because operating you can use for anything you need it for. Capital is specifically just capital items. The other thing as well is usually in the fall, we have free cash that's certified. So if we got into an emergency and it was after the first few months of the year and we had that certified, we could always go to town meeting for an appropriation of that. So the other thing I just want to, my recollection from our joint meeting, our working meeting we had in the fall in October, when we met Select Board and FinCom, and we talked about the transfer of these funds over to both the operating and the capital stabilization. One of the arguments for putting in capital stabilization was to increase that number so that we could do smaller projects and not necessarily the bigger things. So I think one of the intents, if I understood it correctly, the takeaway I had was to be able to fund some of these projects that may not be $80,000, but they might be more than $5,000, to try to get as many of those as we can without a stated goal in mind of keeping the balance at a particular number.
Yeah, I mean, I just see we're gonna park that money aside, not do anything with it, and another year will go by, and we'll have the same discussion next year. That's all.
So let's defer to Monday night.
Yeah, yep.
So number 4, Police Department. There was technically a request for 3 police cruisers. There was discussion in one of our presentation pieces, slides, whether or not we would fund 1, 2, or all 3. And at the end of the day, we landed a majority vote, because there was a minority vote. But the majority vote was to recommend 2. That's what this says right here. Hopefully I've captured it correctly, roughly 90,000 or approximately 90,000, which would be approximately 30,000 for 3 years to acquire 2 vehicles, of which 2 current vehicles would be traded in, one of which would be transferred to the the fire department, and a command car would be transferred to the police department to trade in terms of this whole transaction. So that's what number 4 reflects. I think that captured the thought. Number 5 and 6, even though it says Department of Public Works, I think it was prudent to separate the 2. One of which is for a vehicle lift and an upgraded weight level beyond what we have right now. And there was talk, I don't want to get into the technical aspect and prove that I'm an accountant and not a mechanic, but 2 rails versus 1 rail. I think this was an upgraded lift with 2 rails that could actually service the DPW very nicely, and maybe on occasion other departments in town as well. And the number that we landed on was, I think, 12,343. So in the spirit of a Cowboys roundup, I rounded up to 12,005.
Just a comment, I believe that the lift was going to be 12,000 pounds. It is 10 right now that's out, and they were going to go to 12,000. The first information that I picked up from Forrest was for a 14 and an 18.
Right.
And those prices were a lot higher than this. So I believe Travis went and found a 4-post lift with a 12,000-pound capacity. Any reflection? Yes, no?
Yeah.
I did think it was the higher amount,
14?
14.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in
right.
fact, I thought you were discussing with him 18, and he walked you back to 14.
Okay.
But I-
You have
but-
minutes?
I believe it's
Is that
14.
where we're at?
I'll verify in the minutes, but
Okay.
And I questioned Neil if that was still even going back to the 2-post lift versus the 4-post.
Okay, he said that night, last week, that it was a 4-post lift, and it was in stock.
Yeah.
Because that was the information, when I called his contact, they said the 14 and the 18 4-posts were not in stock in New Hampshire. They were, have to be located, and there would be additional costs for shipping and then install. But this one that he selected allows him to, the DPW guys can install it themselves.
Themselves, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So once again, I think we've captured what we discussed. I don't think there's a vote that's necessary. Number 6,
Wait, can I go back? Were we also looking at splitting costs of this between departments? No, nothing between cemetery and water and fire and police and, okay.
no. And this is purely from the capital depreciation fund, not from any of their individual special revenue funds.
Got it, thank you.
that was also for rolling jacks. 4-post lift with the rolling jacks for a total of 12,359.
There's one rolling jack.
No, we
Two.
were going to bump it to the
Yep.
2.
2.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had 4 posts, 2 rails, 14,000 pounds.
Yep.
That's what this is.
Okay.
Department of Public Works again, to the tune of $220,000. I think if you, hopefully, David, you can support the minutes. And I actually went to the meeting and the point where this was talked about to play it back, and the motion was for 220,000. Keeping in mind that 200 was thrown out at a couple of prior motions, both of which were withdrawn. This one was for 220, which is essentially to enter into the, we hope, the used municipal DPW vehicle market and buy as many vehicles as are needed. Certainly, that would certainly buy one, but with what we've learned in terms of the used market, that is likely for sure to buy 2, and with a little bit of luck in negotiating, perhaps 3.
Yeah, it's 220,000.
That was the hope. 220.
Yep.
David? Yep. Thank you. And the part of the rationale behind new versus used, even though it's used, some that have been cited are of low mileage, but I think what was as most attractive of any of this was, I'm going to use the word immediate, which is needs to be qualified, but virtually immediate delivery. And by immediate, I mean 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, as opposed to 20 months, because the need is immediate, and this seemed to be the right thing to get the quickest fix and maybe the most volume of fix, keeping in mind that a new Freightliner is 256,000. Which is way beyond this, and you'd have to wait 20 months, 18 months to get it.
It's actually more than that. It was over 300 once they put the box, the dump, whatever body they need on the back of that.
Right.
Cabin chassis was like 250 from Freightliner, and then it would have to go to a fabricator to put the box on the back of it, whatever, and that could be an additional 15 to 16 months after delivery of the cabin chassis, so we could be out 3 years.
So items 1 through 6 are essential to be in our committee report so that they can be formulated into warrant articles to be taken to the annual town meeting on May 5th. Number 7, I simply took the liberty of this being a communication from us to the town administrator, but in particular the select board, is going on record that in the special revenue fund the local revenue fund categories, the police chief made mention of this one night, because he's been before us at least twice, maybe 3 times, that there are local revenue amounts for permits and fines and fees and so on and so forth, which annualized could be as much as $20,000. And the theory here is to take that out of local revenues and set up a special, for the lack of a better word, police local revenues fund, where those monies are put into that fund to accumulate for capital acquisitions, in which case 3 years out, we could have $60,000 and we could have money available for the acquisition of a cruiser. At the end, I've gone on record as saying the downside is that would be extracted from general revenues, which is part of our budget. And forgive me for saying, but I didn't think that a $1,220,000 budget would be hurt much by $20,000 being taken out of it. It certainly wasn't going to balance the budget, and I saw it as being of greater use if it was set aside for the police. Not exactly like, but not completely unlike the ambulance receipts funds, which the ambulance receipts go into that fund, and you saw earlier in item number 2 that's how they're acquiring an ambulance. So I just thought that this was the right time and a good thought. Probably not for us to authorize, but certainly the right time and occasion for us to say. And that's what this is, and that's why it was included. And frankly, this report doesn't go to the town meeting. This goes to the select board for them to take out and make warrant articles from it. So it's essentially a communication to the select board, and that's why I took the liberty of including it, and I like its inclusion more than I don't. So, any thoughts on that?
No.
No, I think it's a good proposal.
I think it's a good idea, because someone comes in here and says, I need $60,000, and we're gonna say, well, 60,000 to buy something? 20 is like filling your piggy bank, and then you went out and you bought what you wanted, instead of saying, oh gee, where am I coming up with 60,000? This is the way to go, in my opinion.
I agree. I've not shared this with the police chief, but I would think that he would endorse.
Yeah, that was my next question.
Yeah.
What did he think?
I have not. But if I did, I'm going out on a limb and saying he would wholeheartedly support it.
Because he told us that these new cruisers cost a lot more
Right.
overall, the model and outfitting them. So 60,000, you might, by the time it gets there, a cruiser might cost $60,000 or maybe 65, who knows? So that's the way to go.
So the other point is, it could be some pushback that it's not our place to state, but I think it is our place to recommend. So that's what this is. So I guess with that, I would entertain a motion to accept this particular report, extract the draft at the top of the page, affix Capital Improvement Planning Committee signature and submit it to the Select Board ASAP.
I'll make a motion, we accept.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a motion made and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
I think we need a roll call.
Oh, that's right, because.
Sorry, Heather. So I'm going to go, if you don't mind, Bill,
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Mark votes yes. Heather?
I'm going to abstain on this one.
Yep. Understandable. So, thank you. So the next item on our agenda is revised CIPC bylaws, which you have a copy that has been sent to you. For those of you that are keeping score, this is the 5th iteration. And highlighted a couple of things. Heather, do you think you're going to bring that up or not? That's the,
Is that the wrong one? That's the current one?
that's the old, yeah, I'd say current, but I want to say that's the old one.
Okay, give me a second. Let me find the right one.
I think it was in the same email, 3 attachments. This one was the middle attachment.
Is that the right one?
That is. So, I would submit to you that this is, even though it's not codified, for example, if you look at section 1, it may end up that it's 1-1, 1-2, 1-3. I did not do that, just in the event that some of them are combined. I would submit to you that this, I think, is a better, more thorough set of bylaws than the ones that we have that were certainly well-intended when they were prepared over 12 years ago. The ones that you see now are also fashioned after the Finance Committee that rewrote Finance Committee that rewrote its bylaws 2 years ago, went through the same process of the committee, and then it got submitted to the Select Board, then to Town Council, and then to Town Meeting. But a couple of things to keep in mind is that the old bylaws made no reference to Mass General Law. It said that we were formed under Chapter 41 of Section 106B, and I didn't know if that was the U.S. Constitution or the Magna Carta, or what it was. So we've basically called it what it is, Mass General Law. I would also submit to you, if you look at the old one, the old bylaws, it made no reference to acquisition of equipment. It talked about projects and improvements. And for as long as, Forrest, you and I have been on the longest, you were an original charter member, that's 95% of what we do, is acquisitions. So I think that there are some subtle little additions in there that go a long way. And also, if you don't mind, Heather, I'd scroll all the way down to section 4 and 5. I would start with section 5, and that is that I think being on this committee is, first of all, a privilege, but with it comes some obligations and some responsibilities, and the attendance is, I think, paramount. And what I think it's important for those that do make the effort to attend, and for those that might be wanting to be on this committee but can't because the position is filled, that we be allowed to police ourselves, and if attendance falls short, that we as a committee have the right to vote to vacate that position. This is in large part extracted right from the Finance Committee that has a similar clause in its bylaws. It actually has more meetings than this, simply because the Finance Committee could meet 8 weeks in a row. And somebody could be out of the country for a certain period of time, so the discussion then was 3 was a little bit too skinny, but I think the number of times that this committee meets, I think 3 is a good number. I'll come back to that in a minute. In section number 4, I think it's important for us, as the last couple of years, I've noticed more than once that there are instances where when something does not have to go to town meeting, that an acquisition does not have to come before the Capital Improvements Planning Committee. And I think that's wrong. I think that needs to be fixed. Not that we would control or have authority or any jurisdiction under those other particular sources, but at least we would be in the know that we're going to vote on buying a lawnmower and find out that the library bought one themselves. So I think in order for us to collectively see the whole picture, I think this is a nice clause. It doesn't say must, it says should. It's a courtesy to us to keep us informed as to what's going on. And I'm going to be very candid. To my own surprise, last week I learned that Chapter 90 funds are available for acquisition of equipment, of which some equipment was bought a year ago. If I'm not mistaken, to a large measure. And I just think that in a reporting kind of a way, an updated kind of a way, a be informed kind of way, I think we should know. And that's what this is here, and I was careful in the wording. I don't think it's, I don't think the tone is wrong. I think the tone is right, and I think the request is politely requested. So once again, to your editing skills, I go on record as saying I like it more than I don't, and I like it way more than what we're operating under currently.
Comment?
Yes, sir.
I know last year about this time, we had discussions about the threshold limit of $10,000 versus $5,000 versus 20, 25, 50. There are all kinds of numbers thrown out there. As a courtesy of informing this committee, I might be willing to advocate for a lower limit, just so that we are kept in the loop. You may think that's, again, a frivolous request, and it would just fall by the wayside. I mean, 10,000 is a nice round number. In procurement practices, Heather, help me out here a little bit. If you purchase anything, is it over 10, you have to go out for bid, or is it 25?
So currently for items on Chapter 30B for the purchase of goods and services, it's between 10 and 50,000. You have to solicit 3 quotes.
3 quotes, okay.
They are working on, there is the Governor's Empowerment Act, which I believe brings a lot of those threshold and numbers up and makes it so you don't have to do any formal IFB bidding until after 100,000, which is the same as the school district. But right now it's 10 to 50,000, you have to solicit quotes. Before that, below that, just best business practices. But I've advocated in the past, I think departments have all brought this up in the past, that because the cost of everything becomes more and more, it starts to make it a little burdensome to come back to the Capitol every time something is over $10,000. Maybe what we could do, Neil, and whether it's in here or not, but maybe it's just a matter of, if a department buys something that's capital that's under the threshold, they just notify the CIPC that they did so. Also, I don't know if you see it on your screen, Mark, but there is someone in the audience, I believe Julia has raised her hand.
Okay.
Yep, go right ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. I think Heather actually covered it for the most part already. But to Neil's comment, I do think that that really seems to be going the other direction because the cost of goods is increasing. It doesn't really make sense to lower the threshold. That said, I wanted to comment also on the thought process of informing capital of acquisitions that may have been obtained through, outside funding mechanisms. And I fully agree with that. I think maybe the way to say it would be in order for capital to update their capital plan and include the equipment on the capital plan. I think that's really the reason, right, why you would want to do that.
Well, Julia, are you referencing the capital plan by department or our capital plan for the committee?
It should be on your capital plan.
Okay, thank you.
So we set our threshold at 10,000. I think we should stick to that. I really don't want to hear about a $5 nut and bolt, right?
It's the washer that's the killer.
Well, yeah, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the idea that 10,000 is in section 2 and it's in section 4.
Yep,
Okay.
it's a good threshold for now.
I do like the bit of being included from an informational,
Yep.
process, just so we're told, hey, we did this, and, this is just to include you, FYI, in the loop. So, all right, I'm going to withdraw the question on changing the threshold value. We'll leave it at 10 right now.
So is there a motion to accept these as proposed for submission to, Heather, it goes to the select board?
Yes.
Or to
So-
you? Or to you?
Well, no, it would go pretty much to the select board. I mean, I generally would tune in, like I did last time, if there's anything at their meeting.
Yeah.
I think it's on the agenda for at least the discussion of this, and the presentation from Capital, since you guys are already gonna be there on Monday night. So, we'll get this right over to the select board. Of course, my edit already, Mark, is getting rid of the many ellipses. But
Getting rid of
other than that, I can
dot,
let you know if there's any other
Okay.
thoughts on comments or changes that I'd recommend.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
I'm not offended by that, but I would ask you to go easy. I think there's a motion or a question. Can we take the
Let's
question
take the
first?
question first.
Yep.
Okay, under section 2, if you look at the bullet points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's the last one.
The sixth one. It says, "The committee shall evaluate each capital needs request and through its own voting and priority ranking process will vote on and select with capital needs request to put forward." We did that last year, and it became,
But we did it this year, too.
well, but we did it on an individual basis. We didn't rank them between 1 and whatever, 100, and give them A's and B's, and I like this year's process a lot better. If you remember last year, you had your sheets and you'd fill out, and then Heather was keeping score on her computer, and we were going through, something ended up with, I don't remember, 78.9 versus 83.2, and that's kind of how we prioritize them to create the report. So I'm just asking maybe we remove that.
Yeah, that's a good friendly amendment. I would just say that I don't think that this says what you're saying. I don't think this says that we have to go to that old process of ranking. It says our own voting.
Yeah.
That's what we did this year. We
Like
voted
The
on,
police cruisers. We had choices there.
right.
Okay.
0, 1, 2, or 3. We
Okay,
picked
I
two.
just want to make sure we don't have to go back and
No, I think that
reissue those priority reports. I just found that
you raise a good point, and then that's why I
Did it this way.
My intention was to not lock us into that.
Okay, perfect. All right, I just wanted to have a clarification.
And
Thank
I
you.
agree with you, Neil. I like the way we did it this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think there
Make the
was a
motion.
motion to accept.
I'll make the motion to accept with the, no, not with any with the editorial modifications that Heather suggested, the
Okay.
dot, dot, dot.
All right, I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Wait,
Dave-
roll call. Oh, there you go.
David,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Bill.
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
Mark, yes. Heather?
Yes.
All right.
You vote yes just because you're going to be able to edit it, or did you?
Yes.
Okay, last order of business, it was kind of out there, but then again, it snuck up on us, and that is, there was a open date in the calendar of Monday, the 24th, and I actually posted a meeting prior to asking your approval, because I couldn't get your approval tonight and post it tomorrow because it wouldn't work. So I posted a meeting for us to meet in conjunction with the Select Board Monday evening to review these same two documents. So I don't think we need to have a vote, other than I need you to be alert to that has been posted. So can I get a straw vote in terms of who can attend? Neil?
I can be there.
I'll be,
David?
Yep.
Forrest? Bill? Mark? Heather? I think we're all set.
My printer shoot the beds.
So, so any old business, new business?
What's that?
Any old business, new business? I would, under both, I would say that this committee, at the end of the day, did a very good job. This is a committee report that I think we should be proud of. We dug deep, we asked tough questions, we did all sort of research and study and contact with vendors and dealers, and I don't think some of what is in the report would have been the result had we not done what we did. So not everybody got everything that they wanted, but everybody got something. And I think that's a sign of a good project, and thank you for sticking in there and staying with it. And lastly, we never make mention of it enough, but Scott Wilson is the unsung hero of all of this. He's here before us, he leaves after us, he gets the meeting up and running, the trains are running on time, and for those of you that don't know, he's here for finance, he's here for planning, he's here for charter review, he's here for the select board, and he's here for us. So he doesn't get enough credit, and hopefully that little bit of acknowledgement is credit enough, so.
Here, here.
yeah, I agree. And Mark, thanks for your leadership, keeping us on the right track and keeping us focused on the important issues.
Appreciate that, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? None. Roll call, Bill,
Yes.
Forrest,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Mark, yes. Heather,
Yes.
Good night.
good night, everyone. Good luck with your NCAA pool.